You are live.
Pam?
Yeah, we're live. Can you guys hear us?
Yes,
I
thank
can't hear
you.
anything. Oh, there, I can hear you now.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry about being at 7:01, but just making sure we had everything connected to one virtual attendee tonight. But it is now time to open tonight's Advisory Plan Commission for May 16th. Would staff please confirm the presence of a quorum?
Ms. Berkman? Here. Mr. Deck? Mr. Horkay?
Yes, here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here?
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty? Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Ms. Spoljaric? Here. Mr. McCarty? Okay, we'll check back for him later. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. First item, approval of the minutes of our May 4th meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion from Cindy Spoljaric and a second from Kristen Berkman. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
He's absent this
Oh,
evening.
yeah, thank you. Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljaric?
Yes.
Should we call for Dr. Kelleher or wait for
I'm here.
video?
She's on, but Jenny, I
Yeah.
think you need to show your video in order to vote.
Oh, okay. Am I there? Oh, I'm there.
Okay,
There we go.
Yes.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kelleher on the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We have no, well, item next is rules and procedures review. We have items of business that are in front of us for a recommendation to council and one public hearing item. So if staff would go over the appropriate rules.
Yes, for our items requiring a public hearing, tonight's meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. President will open a public hearing. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak, and those representing a group will be given 5 minutes to speak. Only one member of each group will be given 5 minutes to speak, and for efficiency purposes, we ask anyone representing a group, please come up to speak first. Public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard, and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to Plan Commission members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments, and the Plan Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. For our non-public hearing items, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications that have been made since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes, and the Plan Commission will act upon the petition. For our general rules of conduct, we ask that you please not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time, and again, if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you are attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, please fill out a yellow card, which are available in the back by the door, and bring it to me prior to the presentation of that petition. Those listed as representing a group will be called up to speak first. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record, and we ask that you not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you will be advised when there is approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person and wish to comment regarding a petition, any comments can be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded on to Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We would also like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record, and also mute your microphone when not speaking if attending virtually. If you do come up to the podium to speak, please ensure that the microphone is on as identified by the green light on the base. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no consent agenda items tonight, so we move right into items of business. First item of business is the Town Run PUD, petition number 2111-PUD-27.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Good evening. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. This item before you this evening is known as the Town Run PUD. The proposal is approximately for 27 acres at the northwest corner of 146th Street and Town Road. The PUD proposal is a mixed-use development consisting of commercial duplex dwellings and townhomes. This item was last before you at your May 4th meeting, at which time the petitioner presented an updated proposal that was based on feedback that they received at their public hearing at the end of 2021. At the May 4th meeting, additional feedback was given by the Plan Commission, and the petitioner has made adjustments since then to the proposal based on that feedback, and is back before you this evening seeking a recommendation. Matt Skelton with Church Hill and Antrim is here this evening and would like to provide a brief summary of the modifications that were made since the May 4th meeting. Following his presentation, he'll be available for questions, as am I, if you have any of staff. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr.
Good
Skelton,
evening.
please proceed.
Yes, sir. Good evening, members of the commission. For your record, Matt Skelton with Church Hill and Antrim, offices located at 116 North Union Street here in Westfield. With me this evening is Adam Hill and Dale Pfeiffer with Lore Corporation. Adam's going to help with our presentation here this evening, and John Isaacs with MI Homes is here as well. As Kevin pointed out, we were last before you a couple of weeks ago, and we received some additional requests and comments, and I'm just going to really start where we left off with updates just for the sake of efficiency with your time. The items that we were asked to address include there was a 10-foot setback from Town Road requested in the PUD for the townhomes, and that has been incorporated into the proposal before you this evening. That appears in your red line. We were asked to incorporate a minimum window number requirement for the paired villa homes, and that has been incorporated. There will be at least 2. There's options for more, which are reflected in your materials, but a minimum of 2 windows on each side elevation of the paired homes. We were asked to consider enhancements to the villa lots that abut the, can you put up the concept plan? Is that easy to do? So we were asked to incorporate some enhancements along these lots that back up to the pond area, and that has been done. There's an additional landscaping required between the paired villas and the pond area here. So for each building, there's an additional 10 shrubs and 2 trees along the pond area there to soften the appearance. There's also landscaping, there's also landscaping that'll be required around the detention area. We were asked to, and this was addressed at your last meeting, we were asked in the concept plan, you probably should go back, I'm so sorry. In the concept plan, there's an area identified here in the buffer exhibit as area to be preserved, this vegetation here. And the ordinance was a little unclear about whether the tree preservation standards apply to that area or not. The PUD has been revised to make it clear, and it was our intention that it does apply. We were also requested to amend the buffer yard exhibits, Exhibit F of your PUD. There was some reference to a split rail fence in that exhibit. Those have been changed to accurately reflect a 4-board horse fence, which is what is shown here, and this has been updated with the text here, 4-board horse fence, so the pictures and the words match. Also, there was just a mistake here in the previous version. For some reason, the same trees that appear here were appearing here, and that was a mistake. So this has been updated and corrected. We were also asked at the last meeting to consider language to address signage on the real estate. We can probably go back to the concept plan. And so we have incorporated language that would require all wall signage to be either gooseneck downlit or reverse channel, or as you may refer to it as halo channeled letters in that area. So that language has been incorporated and appears before you this evening. And then lastly, and this was probably the lengthiest of the items that we discussed at the last meeting, we discussed land uses in the mixed use area here. And specifically, there were questions about how to ensure a mix of uses, or how to make sure that this functions as a neighborhood area and not a collection of larger uses. So changes, we worked with the planning staff to develop an approach to deal with that item in a way that is administrable. And I don't want to put words in the planning staff's mouth, but the solution that we came up with was a limitation on the individual tenant, the maximum tenant size for the subject matter that we discussed at the last meeting was for medium intensity retail uses. The UDO has a breakout of medium intensity retail uses, and many of those uses are good and appropriate uses here, but there was a little bit of apprehension about, well, how big could they be? And that answer to that question is in your PUD ordinance, and that's 8,000 square feet. And so with that, did you want to comment at all on the research that we did?
Sure.
Can we switch back?
Can Ms. Kelleher, can she see the presentation? Okay, where's the, oh, here we go. One thing we did, and this was a concern that was brought up last time, was what if there was a building that had 100% retail, for example, or 100% restaurant? So Dale drove around, Dale Pfeiffer with us, he drove around for a day, a little bit more than a day, and essentially took pictures all over of Westfield, Carmel, Zionsville, Indianapolis, and we took 30, we stopped at 30. We probably could have gotten even more, but what we tried to do is we tried to get centers that were similar size and similar character to what we anticipate building at this location. And I want to go through, but the important thing to note is not one of these centers contains 100% retail or 100% restaurant. They simply just don't exist. As developers, in order to have a center that's 11, 12, 13,000 square feet, you have to have a good mix of tenants within that, especially considering the 8,000 square foot requirement that we included for medium intensity. And it's also included for low intensity. So I'll go through some of these. You can interrupt me at any point in time because it may get a little boring, but this is a center. You've got a professional office in Halter Ferguson Financial. You've got a restaurant on the far end you can't see. You've got medical office on the other end. Again, that's 11,250 square feet. That's actually a center we own in Carmel. This is another center in Carmel. It's with the Rise building, or the Rise restaurant. But again, that has a whole mix of uses. This is down the street from the current site. Again, mix of uses. Oh no, this isn't. Oh yeah, it is. This is over in Saxony. Again, mix of uses. So I won't. I mean, we're happy to share this stuff with you, but these are similar size, similar character to what we plan on building. And one of the concerns was, well, what if we get all retail or all restaurant? And it just, the reality is that it just doesn't happen. The person who wants to see this succeed the most is us. We have hard-earned money into this development. We'll have even more when we build them. You have to have a good mix throughout. And the other important thing is, in a true mixed-use development like this, MI, and you can ask Jonathan about this, or he can comment on it, but it means a lot to them to have a mix of uses. So for us to go all retail, it wouldn't happen because of the nature of this center in this location, but it also wouldn't complement the mix of uses. So if there's questions on these or a specific one, we're happy to talk about them, but I won't bore you with all the details of each center.
With that, we're happy to respond to any questions, but we would appreciate your positive consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you. Open the floor for commissioner comments to the petitioner or staff, as the case may be. Andre, would you like to lead?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for that research. I think it's kind of interesting to look at in the context of the sizes of those centers and things like that. I believe strongly in the results that are market-driven within guardrails that we construct, bless you, appropriately here. And so it's good to see that kind of play out with that much research. And that's, it's a lot of fact finding and gathering that way. So appreciate that. Every time that I've opened this concept plan, several times in the last few days, I open it and read all the documents, then I come back to it later and stuff. I really like this here at this intersection because, we've talked so much about how we want to drop off the intensity as we move west. But the reality is we've got, quite a bit of vehicular traffic at this traffic circle, and that in itself needs to be buffered from the larger single family to the west of here. So I think this kind of does bridge that. And it was super important for me that western border be buffered adequately, which I believe has been accomplished. So it looks good to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen, any thoughts, comments?
I had sent over a few comments last week, and I just, I've gone through the PUD, but I just want to review those again and kind of ask the petitioner about these items. So, last time I covered the density issue, so I won't go into that again, but there's not a lot of transition here with the surrounding properties. Going up to 5.5 units per acre is pretty dense. But I won't belabor that particular point tonight. I wanted to talk about a couple other things that I had sent you, which is the architecture on the duplexes. In this area, there's been a lot of new PUDs, and all of those have a minimum of a brick ledge around them, and this is a front facade only architecture on these duplexes. So I've got a major concern on that this isn't got a wider window trim. I know you added the windows, so that's good, but a lot of these rears are gonna A, face the neighbor, and B, face the commercial. So I think there's still a lot of work there as far as the architecture on the duplexes. The other thing I just would like to get clarification on, because I believe the PUD still says that you're waiving all the landscaping along Town Road. Is that correct?
That's not really correct.
Okay.
No. Excuse me. There is a separate section in the UDO that speaks to external road frontage landscaping, and that's the only standard except for It does apply to the sides of the two sides of the villas that face on the access road. The intention with there's landscaping requirements throughout the mixed use hub and also the town road hub, the townhome hub. But the townhome hub, you have exhibits in your PUD that actually tell you exactly what's going to be planted there. So that will be planted. The idea is not to create the road frontage, external road frontage standards are really intended to hide. I mean, the intention of them, if you read them, I mean, it's mounting and landscaping. I mean, we're not trying to hide what this is. We're trying to feature it on a across the street from what's probably going to be one of the busiest commercial centers in this area. And then the the mixed use area has, Kevin, help me out, but there are detention requirements. There are foundation requirements, screening requirements for mechanicals, and there's something else. Parking, but yeah, perimeter parking lot landscaping, which is not insignificant. And those alone will meet or exceed, should meet or exceed your lot landscaping standards. So really the only thing that we're talking about is the external street frontage landscaping, and those would not be appropriate at the places that we've excluded them, or else this development would not address the streets at all.
Yeah, and I guess I have a concern there because of what Del Webb has done just to the north of this parcel. It's absolutely beautiful what they've done, and I think it creates a lot of character along Town Road because this is an entrance into our city, and as you said, it is getting busier, and
Sure.
I believe that's supposed to be a 4-lane road at some point.
Parkway, yeah.
So I think having that consistency along Town Road is really important. And they've set the stage to have a beautiful roadway through there. So I guess I'm still concerned about just having the landscaping with the townhomes.
And if I may, while
Yeah.
we're on the point, I think the intention was to do something that was more compatible with what's going to be across the street instead of trying to mimic a screening standard. I mean, nobody screens a commercial development. I mean, not in the front.
I thought there was a buffer, significant buffer across the street with that PUD.
Sorry. We'd have to look. I don't
Ago.
know that, yeah. One off the top of my head. We haven't had to apply it yet, so.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of it, but I don't know.
I thought I remember that a long time ago, though.
And we had talked about last time, I guess, the impact on the schools. So I did put some numbers together on that because I think this has in the PUD 110 units. And I know that you maybe are just a little bit less when you're in compliance. Oh, I'm so sorry. With the comp plan. But I took the numbers off the 110 units. And so if we think about one child per unit, it could be one, it could be two. I was conservative with one. I mean, that's another 110 kids into the schools, probably 2 more school buses to service that. So I just want us to be cognizant every time that we're approving housing, that we're thinking about that as a body and as a city. The last thing, I guess, that I kind of talked about a little bit was that these uses for me just don't quite go together. It doesn't feel like a neighborhood. Even with the commercial, I feel like there could be a lot more cohesiveness between the actual dwellings and the commercial and making it feel more like a village, which I think the comp plan somewhat talks about in this area. Doing something like that where perhaps you put dwellings on top of the commercial loft type space, and then you're able to transition more towards the AGSF1 neighbor to the west, putting duplexes next to an AGSF1, even though I applaud you on the buffer, I really do, is a use that I just don't think it's appropriate. I think that should be single family. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. continue?
I do have to agree with some or most of what both Andre and Kristen have said. The architecture on the back, I appreciate on the back of the paired villas. I do appreciate the addition of the patios and the landscaping. The fact that these are flat across the back primarily, the patio helps, but then again, not having the masonry or anything to offset or, corner offsets or anything back there, I think is gonna be a pretty monotonous look, looking across the pond into that realm. It'll be pretty visible, like I mentioned before, it's been one of my concerns. I also had the concern about Town Road landscaping. And again, because I do know that we have other landscaping requirements that apply, I'm still having trouble figuring out what exactly we're going to be getting. Because you do give the standards for 146, but the rest of it just says shall not apply. So there's nothing specifically for Town Road. So what exactly we get, especially by the townhome area.
If you look at can you pull up the townhome landscaping exhibit? We supplied this to answer that very question.
It's weird because to me, when I looked at that, it's like the language didn't match. And again, it's that whole substantial compliance and
No, I mean,
how
it
it's
should,
interpreted.
I think the language in the exhibit is exactly duplicated in the PUD. So yeah, there you go. So just to put this into perspective, the actual right-of-way line of the street is right about here. Or actually, that's not true. The right-of-way line, there's about under the city's normal street cross-section for a primary arterial, there's about 16 feet between here and probably about here. And then there's another 10 feet between the edge of what would be the right-of-way line and the townhome. And then this landscaping, these exact shapes are actually described in the PUD text. And what you see right there is exactly what will be planted on every townhome facing Town Road and throughout.
Well, I know, and that's just lot landscaping. I mean, we're also on a major primary. And so again, I'm having trouble feeling how that's going to actually appear because we're not on a small residential street with very little traffic.
Yeah. That rendering that we had, it probably was from last time, darn it. Yeah, the rendering that we showed last time, yeah, it's not in here, showed exactly what it'll look like. I mean, it's probably on your it's probably not on your last agenda. It was on our slides. But anyway, it was designed for, I mean, to address the buildings. This enhanced landscaping along the buildings was supplied instead of the mound and screen that's normally required along a primary arterial. This is to...
But I mean, I'm seeing shrubs, but I'm only seeing 2 trees for 5 units.
So, here, I'll read what the PUD says. So each townhouse building shall be landscaped in compliance with Exhibit G that you're looking at, including at least 4 shrubs and 1 shade, evergreen, or ornamental tree per unit. So each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 times 4 shrubs and a tree for each townhome, and that's in section. And it specifically refers to Exhibit G, but 8.3G, or 8.3E2, sorry, 8.3E2. And we tried to take all the guesswork out of this by just simply giving you an architectural exhibit that we're committing to for each building.
It just normally, you gotta understand, that would be a standard requirement for any project, anywhere. I mean, that I've seen, that I've been dealing with.
I doubt at this scale, at this intensity but
Four shrubs and 1 tree per unit?
per unit.
That's not That's not much at all. That's what we typically require, if not more, isn't it?
And
I've been doing this a while, so I mean, I
that's okay. I mean, I wish we were having this conversation outside of, I mean.
well, I mean, Kristen just brought up this, and I sent a message to staff because, again, this is a primary corridor. This is going to be a parkway, a significant entrance into the community, right? These are townhomes that are going to be directly up on a parkway. I mean, 10 feet off the right-of-way, I get it. But how that's landscaped is really important.
We know it's important, and I think that's what we've tried to show here. But I think what's also extremely important to think about is the character and the quality of the architecture that's going to be along town. This is not Del Webb. It's not up past 151st Street. This is on 146th and Town Road. And so, and it's across the street from something that is already been approved that will be substantial in size. And so we're not trying to bring in a berm or a buffer or landscaping that hides some really cool architectural character, especially with the commercial stuff. The commercial buildings will look really, really good. We don't want to hide that, nor does the site. I don't believe the site should hide that. And we view the same thing with the townhomes. We wanted to bring those up closer to the street, still with the 10-foot setback, but something that had the view so when people drove through, they saw the character and the quality of what we were doing in that site. We think that is the best way to provide the transition to the west and to the north.
I just think residential right up on a primary arterial like that deserves adequate, proper buffering.
If it was a single-family home, not across the street from what is pretty massive that was approved.
Well, that's the thing. It's like,
I
I
don't-
feel like you'd want to screen that view too for the residents, that it would be a selling feature to have better landscaping.
So a lot of the people, and Jonathan can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the people who want to live in these townhomes want to be in the action. They want to be walkable.
They want to look across to a parking lot? I'm
There's
just
a lot-
being honest with you. I'm
Well,
trying
here's
to
one
understand.
example. One example, when you look at, and I'm not comparing, but like when you look at the yard in Fishers, those people live right in the thick. There's a Kroger right there. There's tons of development. There's a Portillo's. There's all kinds of stuff right there. They chose to live there, and they spent a lot of money to do it because they wanted to be in the hub of the action. We view the same here. It could be people who are 65 years old. It could be people who are 35 years old. People who live here who want to be able to walk to the cafe. If they want to walk across the street, if there is a grocery, they can go walk across the street to the grocery. So this is not trying to screen a single-family backyard from what's happening across the street. This is trying to transition it and actually incorporate it to the west and to the north.
On the paired villa side, I'll just move on. Again, the lack of masonry except for on the front elevation and very minimally at that has been a concern of mine, especially on those eastern units that will be on the pond. And I didn't see you really address that in the architecture.
So is that, and I know, Kristen, you brought this up as well, is that concern a visibility issue? So if somebody's sitting out having a coffee, having a meeting across the pond, is that, so when they look across, you want them to see some type of, something more improved than just the hardy plank?
Well, yes, I mean,
Okay.
definitely.
Well, the reason I ask that is because the distance from the commercial buildings to the rear of the paired villas is approximately 300 feet.
Mhm.
So that's a football field away. The second thing is we heard the comments last time, and what we did, am I committed to doing extensive landscaping on the back of each paired villa? So again, it's part of this whole mixed-use development is people want to feel included, so we don't necessarily want to block the visibility. We just want to enhance the visibility. And so with the additional landscaping in the back, if there is somebody sitting at the cafe looking across the pond through the multicolored fountain, probably, they will be able to see some improved landscaping along the back of those villas.
And again, I appreciate the additional landscaping, I really do. It's just the actual architecture, which will still be visible, and it kind of creates more of a wall-like effect look, you know, with the way that it's laid out on the street. So, and it will be visible because there's obviously a pond right there, and nothing to shield that view until you get right up, you know, in their backyard.
Kevin, can you put a picture of the villas up that has the?
And it's just, you have, you're wanting to do a nice, really good style, the high architecture, high value center here. And so the appearance of the housing next to that is also, I would think, incredibly important too.
I won't delve into confidential, private conversations that we've had as a team, but that absolutely came up. And that was, the additional landscaping requirement was something that was required, quite frankly.
If I can address the rear of the home.
If you would state your name and address for the
Jonathan
record
Isaacs.
first, please.
Jonathan Isaacs with MI Homes. If I can address the rear of the buildings, each one of these buildings has a covered patio, so it's not a flat facade on any unit. The customers also have an opportunity to add a 4-foot extension. When they do that, they get what that bottom of the unit looks like, where you're getting a reverse gable and those columns with the larger patio. Sometimes you end up with both patios like you have at the top one. Sometimes you end up with one, and that's, you know, by customer choice. And looking back through all of the projects that we've done, we're probably in a 40 to 50% range of people taking that option of that extra cover. So just by market forces and customer choice, those items get added on to it. So what we really thought was, what we heard was the view across the pond was important. And we felt that landscaping down by the pond, combined with what ultimately the commercial will have on their side of the pond, really creates a substantial buffer, because you'll almost end up with about 6 trees per 100 lineal feet, just like you have on our mound in the back to the SFA, or the SGF, residential AGSF1. Trying to get that out. So really, it's going to be very well landscaped from that perspective. So the view across the pond is not going to be very visible. Now, if we're talking about a few key lots, I think some of the other projects along town have put wainscot on corner lots. We could agree to doing, you know, some full brick on like the 2 lots coming in from the entrance from both ends of the development. And then I think there's one internal corner lot that would have some, you know, side visibility from the street.
I appreciate that, and I mean, that's definitely a step better, but I also see projects where that's done and it almost looks a little silly. Like, oh, look, you made him do this on the side unit here, and we can still see all the others. So it kind of, I'm sure you've seen that too. So it's a little odd. I mean, it looks better for that 1 or 2, but
I think the brick discussion is kind of the eye of the beholder on whether or not, you know, masonry from the buying public, what we're seeing is that's not something where they want their money to be spent on in a house. If you're paying $380,000 to $400,000 for a villa ranch here, and you have to add an extra $15,000 for brick, that $15,000 that they don't care about the brick, they want to do something on the interior of the house with that money. So, you know, we're not talking about, you know, low value home here. And so if it's, you know, from a quality perspective, we have all the quality on these homes. The hardy plank siding, the interior finishes that they start with, they're all at the higher end. So adding brick, it's just forcing the customer to put money into a house, not where they want to necessarily put it.
Good?
I'll be done for now.
Okay. On the topic of brick, I somewhat understand your position. I've always felt like I would be a problem with a lot of these presentations because I have a little tiny 3 courses of brick on my house and I have a chimney. Architecturally, I don't like those kinds of finishes because that's not my style of house. I just feel like, are we really edging out somebody who's got a different level of preference but still builds a pretty darn nice house? And masonry is not necessarily a panacea for any evil that might be out there. It is a quality material and it helps. But I also think that if we get too little of it, we shouldn't be bothering. It needs to make enough of a statement, or it probably does come off like, why is that there? And I don't really think of it so much in the context of a buyer having to spend money on that instead of nicer countertops or whatever it is that they might otherwise have had. But that's no doubt an evaluation in some of your customers' minds. So, Dave?
Thank you. I think you've done a good job over time. This project's gotten considerably better from the beginning. I appreciate all the buffer effort. Appreciate having I know comments were made that I very much agreed with early on about the kind of lack of neighborhood feel and integration of the sections, adding the common areas and breaking up the buildings in the townhome section. I think it's a lot better. You have just a lot of challenges with this site, with arterials on the east and south, and potential commercial to the east, significant potential commercial perhaps in the future to the east, and AGSF1 rural development to the west. And you've got a relatively small parcel to transition all those things. And I think it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of what's been said negatively about the project, but then again, it's a balancing exercise. And I think you've done a pretty good job of, as time goes by, of addressing some of the shortcomings of the plan, keeping, and dealing with the challenges of the site. And I guess if there would be, any architectural, I agree with Bob. I was about to say architectural effort, that it seems to me that there might be some shortcomings on the duplex buildings, but then again, I agree with what Bob said too. So overall, I think you've done a good job with a challenging site. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Thank you.
I probably can't say it as eloquently as Dave has here. I pretty much agree with everything that's been said so far. But for me, and I appreciate what you've done with a difficult site. I like the buffer areas that you've put in. But in my own mind, I just think that it's not an appropriate transition from the SF1 to the duplexes. I was out on the site again today, looked at it from both sides, and it just doesn't work for me with respect to the comp plan. And I also believe that I'm not excited about the architecture of the duplexes, and I'm extremely concerned with the landscaping along Town Road and with your responses to our concerns with respect to the landscaping. So at this point, I understand it's a very difficult site, but I'm not enthralled with the project as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a virtual attendee tonight, so Dr. Keller, you're up, and we need to have her image on the screen.
Okay, you have to see me, right? All right, to make sure it's really me? Okay.
Compliance with something.
That's all right. Can we go back to the concept plan, please? Okay, well, from the very beginning, I've been concerned with more retail on this corner since we were supposed to have LB and we got GB. but that's not this petitioner's fault. And I think a mixed-use hub that could be a neighborhood center would be nice. I'm not sure if we've gotten there yet, but maybe we have. I understand the townhomes to the north, and I like the direction that they're facing. I think they will block anything from the intensity on the east side of the road from the single family behind them and to the north of them in Epcon. My biggest problem, and I think I stated it first in my comments at the last meeting, and I guess it kind of got overlooked, was that there's single family to the north with the Epcon community, there's single family to the south in Shadowwood, and there's single family to the west. Originally, I think your project did have single family, so I have a problem with duplexes. And I also have a problem with the architecture. When I look at Shadowwood across the street, they are complete brick wrap, and maybe brick isn't what I'm looking for specifically, but you show pictures that have multiple roof lines, but in your architectural standards, you do not mention multiple roof lines. In the pictures, you show garage doors that have windows and architectural details, and yet you don't state that in your architectural standards. A few other things like that. I guess the architectural standards and the pictures don't match. And when it comes down to what can be built here, it goes to what's written in black and white, and none of these things that would create a more attractive streetscape or pondscape or backyard to neighbors on the north, the west, and the south. It just doesn't do it. So that's my big hang up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to know, Victor McCarty joined the meeting virtually at about 7:06. So for the record, I apologize, haven't had a chance to jump in on that until now.
Okay.
So he is also available for comment.
All right. If Victor has been listening in and is ready to weigh in, and we can get his image on the screen to do this appropriately, the floor is now Victor's.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Haven't seen you yet, though.
Oh. My camera's on.
Yeah, I can see him.
Okay. Well, I'll just jump right into my comments. And sorry, apologize for the technical difficulties, but yeah, listening to everyone's comments, I just want to say that, you know, like others, I'm very appreciative of what the petitioner has done here with the project. And I believe I mentioned it last meeting. It's come a long way from the initial meeting as the project was presented to how it is now. And I think this is exactly what we want from petitioners. We want to see improvement upon improvement upon improvement each and every time. And I think they've done a great job here of trying to appease and please as many people as they can. Of course, you're not going to be able to, you know, always get 100% on a project, but I think this would be a really great area project for the area to help create that village feel. Again, I would much rather have this as opposed to a even higher density use, whatever project that might go in there. So yeah, I'm just, again, very thankful for everything the petitioner has done.
Thank you. Question for staff more so. There seems to be a reasonable amount of concern regarding landscaping. And one example that I was looking at earlier when we were talking townhomes, there is a specification on the number of shrubs and trees per unit, and it makes reference to something that was up on the screen as an exhibit that has more shrubs but only 2 trees. I mean, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. Is staff comfortable that there isn't really that much of a disconnect and that the representation of how well landscaped the place should be is in fact what you are going to be able to enforce?
I can say anytime there's an actual number in the text of the ordinance, that will supersede. So I guess I can't say for sure the images they show on here, these may be the only shade trees, but some of those may be evergreen trees or ornamental trees. I can't say that for sure since they're not labeled.
They actually are labeled in the PUD.
They are in the PUD ordinance, okay, just not on this image, okay.
Are you saying those are trees?
Yes,
That'd be a question for
Because
the
I was not
commissioner.
interpreting them that small and that close to the building,
there's-
probably to be trees, because there were two very obviously larger things out there that seemed like they would be the trees.
yeah, so if you look at, if you're interested, and you look at Exhibit G, the typical building landscaping for the townhomes in your PUD ordinance, that's an exhibit that she was showing that illustratively shows this, but in the PUD ordinance, it specifically says, at the top of that page and also in the text of your PUD ordinance, each building shall include at least 4 shrubs and 1 tree, shade, evergreen, or ornamental per unit. And that is what is reflected. So if it seems so what I'm hearing as disconnect is actually means we had a landscape architect actually design landscaping for these buildings. They weren't trying to comply with the standards, they were trying to make the buildings look good. And so if there's any disconnect, it's because they were trying to address the building and not a standard.
Okay, and I'm fine with that being the way this has organically kind of grown, as long as that minimum standard that we have in our ordinance is complied with, or better yet, exceeded. Are you saying that is the case?
I missed that very last part.
The way your landscape architect has approached this to do something landscaping that will enhance the look of the building.
That's
whatever that outcome was, I'm fine with, as long as the minimum requirement in our ordinance has been met or exceeded. I'm not going to complain if you put in more landscaping, but I would have a problem if you put in less. I'm just wanting to clarify between you and staff, do we in fact have what we need to be able to enforce this correctly? Because I'd like to move on. I appreciate how much you've gone through, the explanation that you went through last meeting. I thought was very enlightening, and I think you're ready for a recommendation. I'd like to draw the conclusion here to all of our discussions. I just want to clarify a couple of things myself, and that's one of the key ones.
I'll defer to my client on that. We've received a lot of input that we hadn't received before here this evening.
Yeah, so just for the landscaping perspective, Kevin did count these. So if these 3 and these 3 are evergreen trees, that would leave 25 shrubs in between, which would be 5 per, or which would be more than 4 per unit, more than the requirement, and more than 1 tree per unit total. So if this is a mix of trees and shrubs shown on here, then this would exceed the minimum landscaping that they've listed up here.
And as long as that's
As long as that's
somewhere,
the case, and some of these are in fact trees.
and as long as that's written in the ordinance somewhere.
The numbers
We don't
are
have
written in the ordinance, yes, the minimum number.
Was there?
You know, I just want to comment. It's challenging for us as the developer, and I'm just kind of being pretty raw with the commission. We have put together multiple different plans on this site, and we have went back and we've listened to multiple meeting minutes from every single one of these meetings. We've met with certain members of the commission that I believe we're permitted to meet with, and we have tried so hard to put a wonderful transition together for this site. After last meeting, I mean, this thing has been pared down from, and I know it probably doesn't matter, but it's been pared down from 170 or 80 units in 6 commercial buildings to what we have here, and that's a result of us listening very, very intently to every single one of your comments that you've provided. After last meeting, we listened to every single one of the comments that you provided. We went back, we huddled as a team, we put together an issue list, and we tried to address every single one of those issues. And I think we've done a pretty good job addressing almost every single one of those issues. And now we're here tonight, and new issues are brought up. That's very challenging for us, because How do we know? We spend thousands of dollars on attorney fees, on trying to push this forward, on trying to work with this commission to put a wonderful development together at this intersection. A fantastic transition that in 5 years could be drastically larger and could easily get approved based upon what's going to happen across the street. So this commission has a chance to approve something that is a really, really good transition. And you have a chance to work with a developer in us to accomplish that. It's not me versus you. It's us working together to try to put together a really good development. But what's so hard is when we hear new information at subsequent meetings. So for us to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, let's once again try to address the concerns. What I don't know, every single plan we've presented satisfies the comp plan. Every single one of them. We turned over every single rock. We've never seen one meeting minute or anything that changed it. Like, we've tried to satisfy every single comp plan and every comment that we've heard. And what I'm nervous about is if we come back at the next meeting, we're going to have a whole new set of issues. So we continue to pare it back, and we continue to get new information. That's extremely challenging. So we're going to ask for a continuance. We're going to ask for one more. And we're going to try our hardest to address some of the comments. I can't tell you that we're going to address every single one of them because it may not be possible. But we're going to try our hardest to address the concerns that you gave us tonight. The only thing that we would ask is keep in mind that we've worked with you throughout this process. It's a wonderful project. And if you have concerns that you didn't bring up tonight that maybe you think about, email us, call Matt, call me. Let us know that, opposed to bringing new issues up at a subsequent meeting.
I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
That this is not the meeting that you should have heard anything new.
No, it is not.
And to the degree that you are graciously open enough to continue to work on it, that's kudos to you. I was prepared to go ahead and look to see if we could get you a favorable recommendation, because I was trying not to put any new information in. I just asked for a couple of clarifications. I think you've gone a long way here and created something that will probably work very well on that corner. If you believe that you can further satisfy things that you've heard here tonight and are willing to come back, great. We're more than happy to
We're
have
gonna
that
try.
happen, but certainly I hope my colleagues here will get you everything they could possibly think about. And remember, the next time we're here, focus on everything that's come to that point. The time to bring up new things ends in a couple of days. So if you're okay with that.
Appreciate
Can I have two questions? Oh, sorry, Kristen.
First over here to my right,
Yeah, sorry.
Kristen, please.
No, I just on the record want to state that I sent everything I discussed tonight to Matt last Monday, a week ago today. And that was, we had a Wednesday meeting, so, and I was out of town. I sent it Monday. And as a plan commissioner, I would appreciate that we would get a week to give comments. This is basically a volunteer job, and so we're all doing the best we can to get feedback, but it's really important to you to get the proper feedback. I totally agree with you, but I just want to say on the record, for everybody listening and everybody in the room, I didn't bring up one new thing tonight that I didn't email to you a week ago today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Agreed. Thank you. Okay. So do we need to formally request then? Yeah. So we'll formally request the, sorry, go ahead.
One thing, and one is a question for staff. I looked up the Town West. I couldn't even remember the name of that PUD, and it looked like it just said that the landscaping defaults to the zoning ordinance, but our UDO was not approved till 2014, and I think that was 12, if I'm not mistaken. And so in those kind of instances, I'm not sure what even applies across the street. Just if we're talking equality and balance and all those other things, but and I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm really not. If it was something we knew to
It
handle.
depends on each ordinance, to tell you the truth, the way it's written. So Kevin's looking at that now. Some of them default to the zoning ordinance as amended, and some will specifically say the zoning ordinance that was in place at the time of the adoption. So we can look
It
at
looked
that.
like this one didn't say either of those things.
Okay,
That'll
we can
be
take a
fine.
look.
It defines zoning ordinance as just the Westfield, Washington Township zoning ordinance. So I think historically, we have interpreted that as the current, whatever is current at the time of development, which in this case would be the UDO. So in that case, external street frontage, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, would be what would apply along the west side of the town west development.
So they would have to have a full buffer with
Not
a
buffer,
mound?
not buffer. It's specifically not a buffer yard. It's a external street frontage, which has different requirements. I think there might.
Oh, that's what I mean. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to split hairs, but it is a different set of rules.
Yeah, I get it. One thing that, and I didn't think about this until I looked at the site plan again and said, there's a non-residential center sign, and we don't know the location yet, but it looks like it's gonna be right where the townhome entrance is too. If I was a thinking person, it would seem like it would be near that entrance.
It will not be near the townhome entrance.
Okay. There's not many
It'll be-
good
there's really
places
kind
to
of a
put it
town-
on there.
There's a townhome entrance, and we can pull it up and show you real quick. We'll certainly have that for the next meeting, but right where right there. So we view this as the commercial entrance. We view this as the residential townhome entrance. So the commercial sign will be right there.
Okay.
In that vicinity right there.
Okay, I thought you would put it further north, and I had some concerns trying to envision that.
I think MI would have concerns with that too.
Yeah, okay.
And perhaps one of the reasons for that is that it's a little difficult to tell on this particular
I know.
view
It's like just
where
a
the
little more.
additional entrance that you are referring to is actually located.
Yep, I agree.
All right,
Bob,
not to
Bob,
delay
can I-
for things too long, we do have 2 virtual attendees. So Jenny, sounds like you were trying to make a comment, please brief, but go ahead.
I don't want to be brief. The last time I did bring up the concern about duplexes, but I also brought up the concern about the architecture in the pictures not matching the architecture that is written. So hopefully you did correct a lot of other things that I was concerned about, but the architecture in the pictures still does not match the architecture in the written document. So I brought it up before. I just wanted to make sure that that was on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor, any final comments from you?
Just like you, Bob, I was ready to vote tonight as well. But whatever the petitioner feels best, I will go right along with that. And I'll just share that I share similar frustrations that the petitioner mentioned. So, thank you.
Thank you. One last comment. Let me try to put some words in staff's mouth here. There's been a request about maybe having a week to be able to do this. The interval between this meeting and our first June meeting is in fact 3 weeks because we've got an extra Monday in May. So do we have a full week? Everybody can get comments that they might have that they want to write and send in by a week from today? Is that okay? Or do we need them, or a week from, a week from today? That'll still leave 2 weeks in between receipt of comments and the meeting to digest whatever it is, or would you like it in by noon this coming Friday? That's close to a week.
So when you're saying having a week, are you saying a week from now to send in more comments? Or are you saying you'd like to see the changes a week before the meeting instead of the Thursday before? Because
well, we would
those are,
certainly never-
we definitely, we wouldn't be able to accommodate both in 3 weeks.
Yeah, we would
but
certainly
one or
never
the other.
Say don't
Yeah.
get us to us sooner rather than later, but I thought I interpreted the request was to be able to be thoughtful and try to be as comprehensive as possible and have at least the next 5 days to be able to get comments to you for communication to the petitioner, and then them have that opportunity to get back to us. Was I incorrect about that interpretation?
No, thank you. I was actually mentioning it as an overall APC procedural change that I'd like to see for us, just to be able to be better commissioners. For this particular one, I don't need a week.
No, but I think it's the same question though. Are you asking for an additional week after the public hearing to submit comments, or an additional week leading up to a meeting to review material?
As a
Both
general
would be
procedure.
As a general procedural question.
Both would be nice. But right now, I think we're given 2 days to get our comments back normally.
And with the normal meeting schedule where we're meeting every 2 weeks, you can't accommodate both of those. There just isn't time for everybody to do what they need to do.
Even with
So-
4 weeks in between, accommodating both, plus the petitioners having time to actually make the revisions, would not work with 4 weeks in between. And us
I'm-
having time to review the revisions and write the staff report and get them out. So we've looked at this a lot, and that will probably come up during our later agenda item with the UDO amendment. But we've made changes in the past regarding this and tried to make it better. And
Okay, and I understand where we are and why we're here, and I'm fine with the normal time frame that is the Wednesday after the meeting, giving us 2 full days to be able to generate what we might want. I think that's an okay thing to have. And the way we structure, trying to bring all this together, having our agenda meeting to finalize everything on a Wednesday and getting it on Thursday, that would all have to change if we were going to try to get it sooner. Although on occasion, you're able to send out something in advance, and where that's appropriate and possible, I certainly would not, I wouldn't want to tell you don't do that. But I understand where we are and why we're here, and I'm okay with it as it stands now. If anybody else sees it differently, now's your opportunity to voice that concern or opinion. So I think we're good. Appreciate you coming back on June 6th. Have a wonderful time in between now and then. Go to the race on Memorial Day and cheer for your favorite driver or whatever it is that we do in between now and then. All right. Now it's 8:06. Took a little longer on that than we had hoped. Item next for business here is Osborne Trails PUD Amendment 5. It's here for a recommendation to council. Petition number is 2204-PUD-07. Ryan?
Good evening, Commission. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Osborne Trails PUD. The PUD currently allows for 170 townhomes to be built on 43.5 acres located west of Horton Road and north of 193rd Street. The proposed amendment is to allow 108 single-family homes to be built in an area that is zoned for attached dwellings. This item had its public hearing at the April 4th APC meeting and is before you this evening requesting a recommendation to the City Council. John Dabashewitz of Nelson and Frankenberger is here tonight to present updated details of the project. He is available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, John Dabashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Lennar Homes of Indiana. With me this evening is Tony Bagato, as well as Keith Lash with Lennar Homes. The matter before you this evening is the Osborne Trails PUD Amendment 5. As indicated, Lennar filed the PUD amendment application in order to extend and continue the existing Osborne Trails residential community that Lennar is currently developing north of 193rd Street between Horton Road and 6 Points Road. We appear before you this evening to review modifications made to the plan, which address comments we received at the prior public hearing held on April 4th, and seek a recommendation on the request to the City Council. The subject real estate is outlined in yellow on the exhibit now on display. It includes approximately 44 acres and is located west of and adjacent to Horton Road and north of and adjacent to 193rd Street. The real estate is entirely surrounded by residential neighborhoods, including Osborne Trails to the immediate west, Phase 2 of Osborne Trails to the immediate north, outlined in orange, portions of the Chatham Hills development to the immediate east, which is named Aberdeen, and to the south are other undeveloped commercial blocks within Area A of the Osborne Trails PUD. As previously explained, Lennar has filed the amendment application in order to extend and continue the existing Osborne Trails residential community. The original Osborne Trails PUD district was approved in 2017 and amended last spring to include Phase 2 real estate to our north. Osborne Trails is an age-restricted 55 and older residential community, and the subject area will continue with that standard as an addition to the existing Osborne Trails. The permitted use restriction only to allow single-family detached dwellings has been added to the commitments as well. The subject portion of Osborne Trails PUD lies within Area B of the PUD and is zoned for the development, as staff indicated, of as many as 170 townhomes. And by way of this amendment, Lennar is seeking approval to provide for 108 single-family detached age-restricted homes. The result of the amendment would be to permit development of approximately 60 fewer homes, single-family rather than townhomes, all of which would be age-restricted, resulting in no impact on Westfield schools. On display is the original concept plan on the left and the updated plan with notes on the right. As highlighted in red, a more direct pedestrian connection is now provided between the adjoining section of Osborne Trails and this addition to allow for better access to the existing amenity facility. So again, on the left here, there was a trail pathway connection here, and on the right, a little bit obscured here on the map, you can see in red that addition. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. There we go. It's a little better visible now. We don't need to see Chris. Regarding landscaping, Lennar is proposing a 6-foot mound along the perimeter streets, Horton and 193rd, where the current ordinance requires a 3-foot mound. Lennar was asked to consider widening this area from the required 30 feet to a minimum of 50 feet. Lennar's made this enhancement and has also extended that 50-foot wide, 6-foot tall mound treatment along the entire Horton Road frontage, including the frontage of Phase 2. The Phase 2 provision is specified in writing in the commitments. So all along this Horton frontage, previously it was 30 feet, we've widened that out to 50 feet, and all along this frontage, including off-site or Phase 2 area, would be a 6-foot mound along that entire frontage as requested at the prior meeting. Finally, regarding tree preservation, as requested, Lennar has identified the tree preservation area and added the same regulations applicable to the existing Osborne Trails. There are existing wooded areas within Osborne Trails identified as tree preservation, including this space right here. And we've added all within that space the area of existing trees that'll be preserved as part of this development. Regarding amenities, as noticed previously, Lennar will be constructing an additional amenity building with a parking area at a minimum that will serve the residents in all of Osborne Trails. This area is illustrated in the top left illustration. The existing amenity facility is shown in the bottom left illustration. In all, Lennar will be increasing the minimum building area from 7,000 square feet to 11,300 square feet, adding an additional swimming pool for a total of 2 pools, and adding a minimum of 2 additional amenities not already constructed within Osborne Trails for a total of 5 at a minimum. The map on the right illustrates a proximity exhibit. It's hard to see below that, but that shows that the existing amenity facility and the new one provides acceptable coverage throughout the entire neighborhood. As the existing Osborne Trails is outside the subject amendment area, the additional amenity provisions are located within the proposed commitments, which are enforceable and binding with the development of the subject area as an addition to the existing single-family age-restricted community. This is just the concept plan as revised, if you have any questions. In conclusion, Lennar believes that the proposed PUD amendment will be an enhancement to the Osborne Trails neighborhood, and appreciate the suggestions that were provided not only by Council but also the Plan Commission at your last meeting. At the conclusion of discussion this evening, we would respectfully request that the Plan Commission forward a favor recommendation for approval on this amendment to the City Council. Appreciate your time this evening. Be glad to address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's open the dialogue tonight for this one with our virtual attendees. Victor McCarty, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to pose?
I'll just briefly say that I appreciate the petitioner making these positive changes, and I think it makes the project better overall. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
Here I am. I also appreciate it. Just a question on where the commitments are? Are they part of the ordinance, or how does that work for staff?
The commitments are attached to the agenda distribution.
Okay, I see them. Thank you.
And they're
That's it.
enforceable.
By the staff, plan commission, and council.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't have anything further. Thanks.
Did you have another comment, Jenny?
No, I'm
Oh,
done.
okay. Starting to my left here. Mike, Dave, Cindy, somebody, feel free to jump in.
I'll jump in right away and just again thank the petitioner for the changes. I think they're all positive. Appreciate all those. One question I have, I know you've changed the language, try to strengthen it with respect to age restriction. Is there any language in your HOA with respect to rental units? I think we might have talked about that before. Is there anything that would preclude rental units?
I'm going to introduce Keith Lash with Lennar to address that question.
Okay.
For the record, Keith Lash with Lennar. Our current CCRs do have a rental provision. It is a restriction on rentals less than 6 months in duration, so transient rentals are prohibited. That's in place today.
As Airbnb rentals? would
Correct,
not be-
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, I just thank you for the landscaping refinements. I think the overall project was a winner from the start, and with these changes, makes it even better, so thank you.
Can you help me understand the amenity commitments a little bit more? Because it seems like you're showing a different whole area and it's separate swimming pool, but then the language makes it sound like it's all going where the current clubhouse is. I'm just confused.
Yeah, let me scroll. So this is the existing amenity facility right off 193rd. This would be a second amenity facility, and within that space, there would be a second pool, additional building, and parking lot area. To the extent that it wouldn't be crystal clear, if it's not in the commitments, we can add that specification that it is a second location and as it is illustrated here on the plan.
Okay, because it basically says that the clubhouse space square footage required shall be increased to a minimum of 11,000, basically, but.
Total between the two would be that minimum.
Right.
It's not a
And I
second,
guess that's
it's
where
not
it
a second
sounds
11,000
confusing.
square foot building.
Because then, like, is there only one pool at the at the clubhouse now?
Yeah.
And so the second one will not be at that current clubhouse, it'll be at the other
Correct.
club? Okay.
Correct.
All right. I'm just trying to understand that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Am I right? Kristen or Andre?
I guess I just had an amenity question as well, John, on which, I know it says you can choose a few out of the list. Can you just remind me what you already have there?
I'm going to ask Keith to help me
Okay.
out here, but I know there's pickleball, I know there's a tennis court, and those are two of the ones I'm certain of.
And the third is there's a fishing pier as well.
There's a fishing pier.
Yeah.
So probably the other two will come from the bocce ball, picnic, fitness, dog park, community garden, or shuffleboard.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I know that was a concern from some neighbors, so thanks for clarifying.
I have nothing additional. Thanks.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add as well. This item is in front of us for a recommendation to council. Do we have a motion for that recommendation?
I'll make a motion to forward 2204 PUD 07 to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Dave Schmitz and a second from Andre Maui. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Bergman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. That concludes our items of business. We have one public hearing item, a amendment, spring amendment 2022 for the Unified Development Ordinance. Petition is 2205-Z0A and 01. Pam Howard will present for staff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for a public hearing, we do have an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance. As outlined in the department report, changes do affect several sections, but fall broadly into the following 4 categories. The first being changes to the rezone process to accommodate a workshop meeting between the public hearing and recommendation. This would apply to straight rezones, new PUD districts, as well as PUD amendments unless exempted by the APC on a case-by-case basis. The second group of changes involves the creation of a plat committee and the delegation of primary plat and overall development plan approvals to that committee. The third change involves the separation of the overall development plan and detailed development plan processes. Currently, both processes are required for all non-single-family residential projects. The updated process would require only an overall development plan for single-family projects that includes both attached and detached, and only a detailed development plan for multifamily and commercial projects, as well as for any common areas that are not otherwise reviewed with an overall development plan. The fourth category includes miscellaneous changes that are generally related to the platting and development plan processes or relevant definitions. These items would have been included in a future amendment, but were added to this one since those sections were already being edited. Amendments to a zoning ordinance do follow the same process as a rezoning, with a city council introduction, a public hearing at the Plan Commission, a recommendation from the Plan Commission, and final adoption consideration by the city council. This item was properly noticed and advertised for a public hearing tonight and would appear back for recommendation at a subsequent meeting. I am available if you have any questions of the department. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open a public hearing at 8:22. And it's obvious we have no public comments to be made in the building since the room is now empty except for us.
Yep. We did receive one email during one of the previous petitions. Not sure if it really applied to this or the previous, but I will forward it on.
Yeah, and we'll wait for a moment. Anybody that is attending virtually that would like to make a comment, planners at westfield.in.gov, please type quickly and send us a note if you're wanting to comment. It's now 8:22. At 8:24, the public hearing will close.
And I did just forward on that comment. It's fairly short. If you'd like, I can read it or out loud.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that since.
Okay. This comment is from Brandy Dravitt. It says, if the developer does not want additional requests, his plan could just 100% comply with the 2012 UDO requirements. Requiring them to follow the rules exactly would save a lot of time for planners and council. And as I said, that may have applied to a previous petition, but they do have UDO listed in the subject line.
Okay, thank you. It is now 8:24, so if there hasn't been another email, I will close the public hearing. And the floor is now open for any APC members to pose questions to staff. Do we have any? Andre?
So the workshop is going to require some logistics to be worked out, but is it none of that necessary to be put into the ordinance then? That all just, we figure out later how to facilitate and everything like that shakes out after we've adopted this?
Correct. Some of that will go into the Plan Commission Rules of Procedure, which will also need to be rewritten as a part of this process. But really, if you read through the UDO, the few sections that mention PUDs and rezonings, there's very little as far as the dynamics of the process itself. So most of that would be a Rules of Procedure update and a calendar update.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from those present? Virtual attendees, Victor, any questions or comments for staff on this?
I do want to.
I just want to say that,
sorry.
yeah, I just want to say that this is awesome. I think this is definitely something that is needed for us to help distinguish different projects that come through the Planning Commission to help educate the public and not cause confusion. And just any way that I can help out and be a part of, I'd be happy to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher, any questions tonight for staff?
No, I don't think so.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Schmitz, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff. It's obviously a pretty comprehensive effort to do this. And I know when we had talked about having, people question when we would get around to this, and you mentioned you were taking a broad stroke at all these revisions, and you definitely have. So thank you for all your time and effort that went into this.
Thank you. Any other comments from?
I would just echo what Dave just said. I really appreciate all the effort and time and meeting with some of us individually to kind of discuss the issues. I was wondering if we would have perhaps at least 3 weeks or 5 weeks to review this. I personally feel like I need the time to go through and read and reread, so I understand all the full ramifications, being somewhat new to the council here.
Sure. Does staff have an opinion on the duration between this public hearing and the next step?
Yeah, I think we can be flexible on that. Our next meeting is in 3 weeks, as you mentioned, Bob. So one thing that may be beneficial, we could put it back on the agenda as a miscellaneous item in 3 weeks, and you guys can email us any questions or concerns you have, and then we can have it as a discussion item, not necessarily for a vote, and then we come back potentially 2 weeks after that for a vote on the item.
That sounds good to me if it works for the time frame that we'd like to get this effective from.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Spoljarek, any questions, comments, thoughts tonight?
I want to really thank staff because I know this was a lot of work to get together. And I don't know who all did it, but I'm sure you guys worked as a team, so thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the workshop. I've mentioned several times, I feel like, and you saw it tonight, I think one of our petitions would have really benefited early on from a full workshop kind of setting. So
yep.
I'm thinking that's going to be great for everybody. This right now, I think, says 3 or 5 in the staff report for the Plat Committee, right?
Yes, the state statute allows it to be 3 or 5 members.
So then who chooses that? Whether it's 3 or 5, or how does that get handled?
Yeah, I believe that would be the Plan Commission and creation of the Plat Committee, so that is a discussion that would be beneficial to have at the next meeting or prior. That will go largely in, I believe, the rules of procedure. The Plan Commission rules of procedure will outline the Plat Committee, and also will, the Plat Committee will operate under those Plan Commission rules. So we will need to decide if we're going to have a 3 or 5 member Plat Committee and how you would like to populate that. As it said, only one member of the committee has to be a Plan Commission member. They can all be, but at least one has to be a current Plan Commission member. The rest could be citizen members, they could be staff members. I think I mentioned to some people that city engineer in some communities sits on that. I don't want to volunteer him without talking to him, but I think that's a common one from what I've heard.
Yeah. But we don't need to actually decide that yet, because that's going to be when we do the bylaws, which is after we get this done.
That's right, but the sooner we have kind of that feedback, the sooner we can get that prepped and put into that document revision. I guess I would encourage this group to start thinking about that and maybe come to our next meeting with some ideas on how we can approach this and populate this thing, because again, the sooner we know that, the better. And just another thing to keep in mind, as you're thinking about this, I think our hope all along has been for the Plat Committee meeting to be a daytime meeting. It would be, of course, available virtually, real time, and also later posted on our website for anybody that wanted to watch it. But that's probably something to consider as we're thinking about the makeup of that group, is who's able to attend a daytime meeting. And really the reason for us of moving it to a daytime meeting is it gives us the time to be able to, make all of these other procedural changes work, and all of the additional time things that we're trying to balance, time requests for revisions and all those other things, something has to give. And that's one of the things that we think is an easy thing to change that will free up some resource time.
Yeah, and I believe that is mentioned in the department report as well, that people attending those meetings, watching those meetings will have the same public comment options they do for all other public meetings. We'll have the planner's email that they can email in real time during the meeting or prior to the meeting. The notice requirement will not change. It would still be 10 days prior. Our timing would work a little bit differently as it was described in the staff report, because we would be doing petitions in one meeting. So we would be not noticing them until they are compliant and ready to go to plat committee. So there wouldn't be a public hearing and then the plat appearing back 4 weeks later at the next meeting. Once it appears at the plat committee meeting, it should be ready for approval unless something comes up during that meeting.
Pam and Kevin, Ginny, what are your thoughts on the makeup and the number of the plat committee? I mean, I know there will be a staff person there. Should there be one on the committee too? And other thoughts? You guys have had some experience with this. We have none, so.
The one thought I have is if we did 3 members, I would suggest having alternate members in case people are unable to make it. I know we've done that for BZA before, where we've had an alternate assigned to a certain representative or a group of representatives. So I think if we did 3, that would be pretty important, just because people get sick. And with our current virtual meeting rules, at least a quorum have to be present. So we couldn't have 2 people attending virtually on a 3-person committee.
And somewhat for that reason, my thinking was trending towards maybe we need 5 people so that we have if there are 2 folks that aren't able to make it, then we'd be screwed if we have only 3. We can still have a quorum difficulty, but I'm expecting that the same requirement would be that if we hold this meeting, we'd have, if it was 5 members and 2 needed to be virtual, we'd have to have the other 3 present in City Hall to be able to conduct business. Is that correct? Yes?
Yes, unless different virtual meeting procedures are adopted, and I'm not sure what the state allows. I know our legal counsel wrote that, and it was modeled off of the state, but I don't know if they have certain minimum requirements. But as of now, it would operate under the Plan Commission's rule, which is a quorum has to be present.
Okay. And that's probably as it should be. I believe Victor had mentioned something about being interested. I would certainly be willing to serve here. We have 9 of us, or 7 APC plus the 2 councils. Others that might be interested now that we've had the public hearing can certainly express that to staff, myself, anybody that might be listening or watching this later that would have some sort of an interest in this. Be good to know who's out there that might actually be somebody we don't know that wants to participate. So kind of hard to figure out who it ought to be until we might know who in the community, if there is somebody that wants to jump in, who might they be. So let's see if somebody surfaces in the next couple of weeks, the next 3 weeks before our next meeting, and this will all start to come together. Any other comments we need to discuss tonight? If not, that completes our agenda. Everything else as far as what's on here in petitions is continued to a future meeting, and it takes us to reports and comments from Plan Commission members. Are there any general comments from Plan Commissioners, including the 2 that are on here virtually? If you have any comments for the group, speak up. Hearing none, I look to Kristen Berkman for a downtown update.
I can't recall if I had updated that we met with the COA team. I think maybe that happened since the last APC meeting, but we had a really great meeting with that group and went through all the preliminary concepts and got their feedback. So we just are continuing to move forward to, get feedback from a lot of different stakeholders.
Thank you. City Council liaison.
Council met May 9th. The mayor proclaimed June 3 through 5 National Gun Violence Day and Wear Orange Weekend. Braden Smith was recognized as the 2022 Indiana Mr. Basketball. With the first quarter budget versus actual was presented, and Grand Park finances and valuation methodologies over there as well. So if you're interested, you might want to take a look at the YouTube. All the following were approved. The Woods Robinson Briggs PUD amendment for Harvest Trail. Is it Harvest Trails or Trail? I've seen it both ways. Do you guys know? Not, I guess
I believe
that's
it's Trail without an S.
Okay. Chatham Hills PUD Amendment 8, Grand Park Village PUD Amendment 4, fiscal plans and annexations for the Briggs and Robinson parcels. Also approved a resolution finding property owners in compliance for tax abatements. That's what we do annually. A resolution accepting additional contribution toward the Union Square Development Project. So hopefully that project can get moving fairly quickly, we're hoping. And that was actually from a mistake that was made a little bit ago. So I just want to say thanks to Justin Moffett for being a good player here and getting helping us out. There were 4 introductions. The Andover PUD amendment for Parcel 1, which is, I believe, a Montessori school on Grassy Branch. Town Road Crossing PUD Amendment 1, and both of those are coming to us June 6th for hearing. The UDO amendment that we heard tonight, and an ordinance reestablishing the CUMCAP Development Fund. So, tax. That's it.
That's all?
That's it. Nice short meeting.
Yeah. BZA met in between our last meeting and now.
We did. BZA met May 10th, had, I think, 5 items, 3 of which were very straightforward. The Star Bank had some signs, some variances regarding signage. Star Bank next to the new Chick-fil-A in Wheeler Run. Those were granted. Two pool location variances, one in Centennial, one in Spring Mill Park, were pretty straightforward, were approved. Next, we had 2 items that we spent a lot of time on, one of which, 17821, that's not right, 17218 Joliet Road, just south of 32, east side of Joliet Road. We had approved a variance and maybe a special exception for like a horseback riding social work kind of organization a short time ago that was in the paper and stuff. And they backed out, and a guy wanted to use that site to put up a barn for private athletic training facilities for his family. And basically, we tabled that after a long discussion in order to let the petitioner come up with some acceptable commitments that would meet the concerns of neighbors, yet achieve what he's trying to accomplish with the property. The last item on the agenda was Custom Concrete owns some property on 193rd Street, a little bit east of Centennial Road, and they had sought a variance of use and standard to permit outdoor storage of gravel. Basically, once the pandemic hit, they were stockpiling pea gravel up there because it was hard to get, and anyway, the use was pretty intense and jumped in intensity, and the variance request was denied after quite a bit of public, pretty persuasive testimony from the neighbors. It was a situation where they, in the 90s, they had a 10-year variance that expired. They were given 10 years in order to build a new facility, which they did over on Westfield Park Road, where Custom Concrete's neat facility is. And I think basically when they needed the space, they started using this again, kind of out of the blue, and it wasn't well received. So anyway, the variance was denied, and that was it.
Thank you. Staff. Or Community Development Department.
Nothing additional.
You're supposed to have something every meeting now.
We did, it's the UDO amendment.
I guess that qualifies. I'll let you go on that one.
Do we have any word yet on that one request from a legal perspective for the PUDs? Not to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, I don't mind. I had a very long conversation with your chairman earlier, and I asked him how he would like for me to proceed. So I've delivered the message. He can share. I'm more than willing to have one-on-one conversations too. I've intentionally not put anything in writing because I don't know how that gets disseminated. But more than willing to talk with anybody who wants it. There's a mechanism to do it.
But
if that wants to be done.
it's not something we can just jump right into and say, let's document this because we're going to do it. We probably really need to make sure that this body in its largely entirety and council is largely in its entirety also favorable to do this, because we have a rather lengthy history of allowing the current status quo to have happened over and over and over again. So we want to make certain that if we're going to put this on the table and formalize it and say, developers, when you come with something, be prepared for everything. We can't just bring a left hook out of thin air and smack them with that without risking something that we don't want to risk probably. So I think we need to take advantage of council's offer to have your own discussion. I had a fairly good one. I think it's something that probably continues to have merit, but there could be unintended consequences. One of the laws I always fear most is the law of unintended consequences, because we get caught in that every now and then. So I want to make sure this isn't one of those things. So I wasn't of a mindset to say, let's jump both feet in right away and try to do this. I'm going to ponder it for a while, try to figure out what I might want to really try to do. I think everybody just needs to do the same. Call Beth if you would like to get more from her feedback directly. And we'll just, I think I'll need to think about it for just a little bit, make sure that we're approaching something that we really do want to do. And then we'll have to come to a consensus on, yeah, let's proceed and make sure that council's on board with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Virtual attendees, any comments? We'll throw that open to you for a moment here before we adjourn the meeting.
No, just a motion to adjourn.
Victor, any comments regarding this most recent discussion about the PUD amendment process?
I do not, but I'll second Jenny's motion.
Well, I'm ready to accept that motion from Jenny here and Victor to second it. Staff, please call the roll. That's a motion to adjourn.
Yes. Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Ms. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
At 8:43 p.m. Everybody have a nice 3 weeks in between now and the next meeting.